Hello everyone, Rob Guest from football.london here, and welcome to the latest episode of Gold Guest Talk Tottenham, sponsored by NordVPN. Joining me as ever, it's Alasdair Gold. How are you?
Yeah, not so good, not so good. Hope you are all right though. I mean, can we just talk about the result in Budapest and the performance there? Can we just leave it at that? Is that okay?
If we want, we can just gloss over yesterday. We can just end the podcast right here, if you want.
That's all, folks. Thanks.
But yeah, we've unfortunately got a defeat to talk about. We've not had one to speak about for quite a while now, because Spurs went into yesterday at Brighton on the back of 5 successive wins in all competitions, and it looked like there was going to be a 6th win on the board. Really impressive first half. Second half was just a complete shambles, in fairness, really. And yeah, just not the way you want to go into an international break, because it's a couple of weeks' time when West Ham are up next at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium.
Yeah. We should stress from the off. You and I were covering different games yesterday. We had a kind of one of those rare occasions where you were called into action elsewhere as well. So you were actually at Chelsea's match covering that, which had some incident itself towards the end. But yes, I know you've kind of caught up on as much as you can on the Spurs game, and trust me, I think I probably would have rather watched a kind of an abbreviated version of it, because not for the first half though. First half was brilliant. The first half was so good. First half had everything that suggested this was a team coming off the back of 5 wins on the spin and full of confidence. Honestly, some of the attacking play in that first half was phenomenal. Up there with the best interplay I've seen with those players. Back flicks, patterns of play, triangles, the movement. Dominic Solanke was incredible. Dominic Solanke, we were talking about it at half time among the media. He was kind of a bit like prime Harry Kane in terms of the coming back and linking up play and doing that aspect of it. And it really jogged back memories of that. And yeah, we were all in the kind of the media room. I had actually say there was a complacency among the media as well as the press. I know it. Sorry, as well as the players. I don't think obviously it has any real effect on the pitch at all. But we were all like, "Well, that's comfortable. That's great. You know, they're probably going to go on and absolutely smash this now." And one journalist, who I will not name, made the fatal mistake, probably 45 seconds before Brighton scored their first goal, of saying, "Do you know what? I really believe Spurs are going to hold on to this and actually get some more goals." That's the beginning of the end. You can mark it from that moment.
Was that yourself?
It was not. I promise it was not myself. It was someone from a major national newspaper said it. And it just went to pieces. It was everything that Spurs have kind of progressed in this season, in not collapsing in games, in improvements in their defending, and less kind of stamping out the individual errors in recent weeks so much. It just all came back with a vengeance. It was only about 18-minute spell the 3 goals came in that second half. And don't get me wrong, Brighton were the far better team across the entire second half. I'm not saying that it was only that 18-minute spell, but it was just like they undid everything that they'd done really well. Only Spurs can flush down the toilet 5 wins in a row in 18 minutes and make everyone across an international break remember just like the really bad parts of the game. But which, like I said, it's such a shame. The first half was brilliant, but the second half, oh my goodness, there's so much we can pick apart in it. It was dreadful.
I mean, the results at the Amex for Spurs haven't been great in recent years. Last season, there was the 4-2 defeat. I mean, that looked a bit more competitive, the scoreline, just because of the 2 late goals, the pullback. But Spurs were ripped to shreds that day. And I'll always go back to that 3-0 game when Poch was in charge, like a few days after the Bayern Munich defeat, which was, 7-2? I thought the Brighton game was even worse than the Bayern capitulation. And this just, followed suit, really. And like you said, all looking so well. And from what I've seen in the first half, the Spurs were fantastic. And you're looking at the first 15, 20 seconds, winning the ball back, lightning quick counter-attack. And maybe if that chance had come, a bit further into the first half, then the quality on the ball from Timo Werner might have been there, because that would have been one of his first couple of touches. You put it into the right area where you want Brennan Johnson to be, but there's just too much on it in the end, and just unfortunate after that, really, how things panned out, because for the first 45 minutes, that's the Ange Postecoglou Tottenham team we've been wanting to see. And we have seen at times, but over the course of the 90 minutes, it's not always been the case. And I mean, this was the classic game of two halves, really.
It was. That was what Maddison said. He said, if any game shows that cliche, it was this match. First half, I mean, Werner and Johnson had the beating of their man every time. They were roasting the fullbacks, flying past them. Werner, again, it was another one of those games where he did a lot of really good stuff. He beat his man every single time down that flank. But yeah, like the ball across in that opening 18 seconds, it just needed to be better. He did get an assist. Obviously, we've got to say that. He assisted James Maddison with a good run. Obviously, the assist itself was quite simple, although I quite like the fact he'd shaped as if he was about to cross and then instead stabbed it inside to Maddison. And he had a chance himself that he sent over the bar. But yeah, it's kind of his performance right now, that there's good stuff in it and moments within it. You're just like, if you'd just done that a little bit better. But I don't think you can kind of single out Werner as being the man that made the difference in a negative way yesterday, because there were so many poor displays. I'd say mainly at the back, especially in the second half, which was just such a difference. I mean, you could argue maybe that the pressing wasn't as good in the second half. I thought first half they pressed really well, Spurs. They had 18 ball recoveries in that first 45 minutes. I mean, Danny Welbeck called the Brighton performance in the first half embarrassing. He thought they were that kind of overwhelmed by Spurs because they just got in and in again. I think it's one of those where, yes, Brennan Johnson had a big chance towards the end of the second half when he on the run, and another lovely move that came of that. Romero to Solanke to Kulusevski plays it into Johnson's run, uses his strength well, and then ironically, after scoring 6 goals in a row that are all in the bottom left-hand corner, he kind of whacks this one centrally and over the bar. And you kind of think, if you put it where you've just been putting it every single game, that's probably the game done and dusted. But yeah, there's lots of stuff I think we can talk about what Postecoglou said after the game, which some elements of it I thought were right. Some elements of it I felt he was a little bit flippant in, and I don't think they quite made sense, some of the things he said. And there was also a comment before the game, I don't know if you've seen about this, that he made to Sky, which unfortunately afterwards looks really daft. So he was asked before the game, everyone's expecting an open contest. How will, what will Tottenham do to keep the game controlled? To which he replied, we don't. Let's keep it open. That way we entertain everyone and hopefully get the result we want. And then he went on to say, we certainly want to play an expansive game and be really positive, and Brighton tried to do the same thing, so it should be a good game. But of course, the first half of that is going to get clipped up, put out there, because you did keep it open and it lost 3-2. I just feel with Postecoglou, I love a lot of what he says. He says a lot of fascinating things. He's got great insight into football and life itself. But once in a while, he comes out with these very flippant, sometimes they're just contrary answers. Sometimes they're maybe an attempt to be a bit crowd-pleasing answer. I don't know. And it makes him look a little bit daft, and they're very much ripe for people to take the mickey out of. And I felt with that was one of those. And to say, that they're not looking to control the game, that's not his way. He wants his team to control every game. We hear him say it after every single match. So it was very much one of those that just makes him kind of look a little bit simplistic in his view on football. And we know he's not, because we've seen the amount of different kind of tactical aspects to his football, which aren't always noticeable because of when he comes out with comments like that. But yeah, there's some more in the post-match press conference which we can talk about as we go on as well.
We'll discuss Brennan Johnson's goal then. So that was 6 goals in 6 games. And I mean, was it prior to that there was a goal disallowed by offside?
Yeah, it was a funny one actually. Pedro Porro gets to the byline, pings across to the back post. Timo Werner heads the ball towards goal. The initial thought among the media was that his head would cross the line, but I think looking back at it, the keeper saves it and it gets knocked against Maddison and then goes over the line, I think. Referee looks at his watch. It pings, obviously, the ball's crossed the line. Points towards the halfway line to say a goal. But as he does that, he realises the lineman's got his flag up. They check it. And Porro, in the initial moments, is marginal, but he is just offside. So, yeah.
Yeah, because they showed that on Match of the Day 2 last night, but didn't show a replay of it. So you just had like no idea how the ball went into the net. But it did look like it wasn't Werner's header. There was another touch in there. But yeah, this is it, isn't it? It's just a matter of inches in games sometimes. And, you know, if that one counts for Spurs, then 3-0 at half time, looking home and dry. But yeah,
but two should be enough, isn't it? That's the thing. I'm so loath to say that even Johnson's chance should have put the game beyond sight. Yeah,
that's it. 2-0 such a dangerous scoreline, though. How many times have we seen a 2-0 lead eradicated? It's just one of these where
no, it shouldn't be though.
I know it shouldn't be, but you know, a team in total control at 2-0, they then concede. Then just the momentum in the game just totally shifts, and you just know you're then going to concede another one. And that was probably the case at the Amex yesterday. But just going back to Johnson's goal, really well worked. Great finish. Dominic Solanke, brilliant in the build-up play with lovely through ball to him. And as you mentioned, with like comparisons with Kane earlier, that was just like a classic Harry Kane through ball.
It was. If anything, kind of also comparisons with Kane. There were points when I was so impressed with what Solanke was doing coming deep, but there were other moments you're like, but now you need to be back in the box because they need to get the ball in there and there's no one in there to get it. It was beautiful. I mean, Doggy chased back, was pressing really well. Maddison wins the ball back, knocks it into Solanke, and just the inch perfect ball he plays into Johnson's path is brilliant. And then Johnson's finish is one of a man that is constantly scoring goals right now, and it was lovely first time. That bottom left corner, like I say, it's kind of been one of his best mates in the last month or so because he just keeps getting the ball into it. Lovely, and you can see his face afterwards. It was lovely because he's genuinely like, this is amazing. You can see his face. He's just like, I can't believe I keep scoring. It's so cool. Everyone coming over to him, and it just kind of set the tone for what was meant to be a completely different day that never really arrived.
Second goal as well, really well worked. Keeper probably should have done better. Looking at it, he got decent hand to it, just couldn't keep it out. But nice finish from Maddison, and I think probably something he needed as well, because didn't get the call up, did he, for the England squad in the end when Dominic Solanke did. And nice to see Timo Werner get an assist because he has played well, I think, in parts recently, done a lot of things right, but all the focus sometimes has been about lack of end product. Certainly in Manchester United and Ferencváros when he had that brilliant chance when he tried to go around the keeper and messed it up. But maybe a simple assist, but I think one he'll be glad to have on his tally for the season.
Yeah, you could see the way he celebrated when Maddison scored. I think that celebration, his arms aloft, was almost as much for kind of relief for himself, I think, a little bit. And I mean, before the game on Werner, I think there would definitely been a fair chunk of Spurs fans that would have loved to see Mikey Moore get another start. I think in reality, it was always pretty unlikely, mainly because Werner played 64 minutes on Thursday night. Mikey Moore played it like 95 in total. And Mikey Moore had only played 90 minutes twice this season before that. Once a month ago for England under-19s. And then the second a month before that for Spurs under-21s, I think it was. So it was, to ask him 2.5 days later, a 17-year-old, to go straight out there in a Premier League game, in a very high-energy Premier League game as well, to try and do it again. I think it was always going to be very unlikely that Postecoglou was going to chuck him straight back in again. Werner did kind of, especially first half, was one of kind of Spurs players that tried to make things happen. And the goal was beautiful football from start to finish. They played around the press. Porro knocks it into Solanke in the middle. Solanke showed really lovely strength to turn and get away with the ball. picks out Werner's run really well. And then, yeah, like I said earlier, Werner kind of almost shaped as if he was going to cross and then stabbed it inside to Maddison. And yeah, the goalkeeping's dreadful. It's kind of, he dives and just fumbles it through his fingers and into the net. You can see as soon as the goalkeeper lies on the ground for a while, knowing that they've done something a little bit wrong. But even during that, there were little warning signs I kind of felt from Brighton that Spurs weren't heeding. There was Welbeck slid a shot wide from about 6 yards. He had a header that was much more difficult that he sent spinning just off target as well. But it was just these little moments, and Matoma was starting to get a little bit more joy down the left. And it was almost like, I think there's this kind of idea that, Postecoglou in the changing room at half-time would have said, "Oh, this is wonderful, don't worry about them, they're rubbish." There's no way he would have said that. He would have said, as the coaches would have, more of the same, what you're doing, but watch out, they're obviously going to be a threat down those flanks. And yeah, unfortunately, that first half, while brilliant to watch, none of those lessons were heeded.
Just a bit more on Solanke then, because what I saw on the highlights yesterday, he came in for so much praise. I mean, everyone knows about his goal record at Bournemouth, and that's in part why he has got the move to Spurs. But I think everyone's now seeing the other aspects of his game a bit more, especially in terms of the pressing and how hard he works, tracking back at times. And that was evident for both of Spurs' goals yesterday, the part he's playing. And I think it's great that he's in the England squad for these upcoming games. Quite whether or not he gets a decent amount of game time, I'm not quite sure. It would be nice to see him get some minutes because he's only had the one cap to his name. And to be fair, I probably would have had him in the squad for the Euros last year, going on his record in front of goal, when someone like Ivan Toney barely made an impact after his return from his ban. But I think opportunities are going to be there for him over the coming international breaks. But he's certainly made a big impact at Spurs in his first few weeks as a Tottenham player.
Yeah, I think, very quickly on England, yes. I mean, his first England call-up it's like more than 7 years, or almost 7 years. Yeah. Harry Kane did go off yesterday, looking a little bit. There was quite an injury where they were quite worried about him, but then I think he played on and then he came off. So you never know. They might be a little bit more cautious with him, and that might help Solanke to get some minutes. Kind of from a selfish point of view, you kind of almost like, I don't really want him to, but you do also. I think all part of his confidence. I think a lot of Spurs fans hopefully will have been impressed that there's so much more to his game than they probably thought. I think you definitely knew, you could see from last season that he was a finisher, and you could see a lot of the pressing that we know about, and also kind of elements of dribbling with the ball, but the ability to come deep and play these pinpoint passes, that's, even to me, I saw a bit of that last season, but I feel like I've seen a lot of that already as a Spurs player under him and within him. And I think Ange will want some of that. He will also want him to be in that box, though, as much as possible. That's what his strikers do. But he was one of those who my player ratings were so difficult last night because difficult to a degree. But if anyone saw my half-time ratings, they're all full of like 8s, and I think there was a 9 in there as well. Because like Solanke was brilliant first half. Kulusevski was amazing first half. Every time he got the ball, he was turning his body, using his strength to get away from people. Johnson scored. Maddison scored. Werner was decent other than that early kind of fluffed opportunity to get it across. And Bentancur was actually pretty good first half as well. And then what they turned out for the second half, the ratings completely had to change because of obviously what happened. Although some of those attackers I still kind of left around the 7 mark because I don't think you could take away from what they did in the first half. And one of those was Solanke, because I just thought he almost couldn't be helped second half by just the complete lack of service that he suddenly got. They just failed to get the ball to him. And even when he was trying to come deep, it was like then there was no one else for him to then provide with the ball. We're going to get onto the second half in a moment, but it's really difficult to talk about such a fantastic first half without constantly knowing what came around the corner in the second half. But definitely Solanke, it was another positive contribution, an assist for him. Obviously, the first game he started in 4 that he hasn't scored in, but he did get a lovely assist and involved in the other goal as well heavily. I'm trying to think if he had any real chances. I don't think he actually had any chances at goal himself that I can remember. But yeah, a couple of derbies coming up after the break, and I think as long as he can steer clear of any injuries on this international break, he'll be a very important focal point up front for those games.
Yeah, before we move on to the second half, because there's an awful lot to discuss after what happened on the South Coast yesterday, Ali's going to tell us about the benefits of using our sponsor, NordVPN.
Yeah, I actually maybe even got a stark reminder of how much I need NordVPN, in that I made a complete mess out in Budapest. We, as I've said many times when I talk about NordVPN in the past, one of the things I'll often use it for is if I'm abroad, I want my device to think it's back in London so that I can access various things to be able to work out there. And that often is at matches. Sometimes you go to stadiums that don't have replay monitors, which are very important for us as journalists to exactly see what happened in a moment that we saw in a split second. And ordinarily, if we were in England, we could just watch that back on maybe Spurs play, or we could watch it back on something else, on whatever TV channel was streaming it. And I had an absolute nightmare because I went to flick it onto, it was TNT Sports, wasn't it? It was covering the game, and I was like, okay, well, I'll put that on in a stream in the background. And the fatal mistake of my Nord subscription had lapsed, and I hadn't had it renewed. And so I had an absolute nightmare. I couldn't rewatch various moments, and I was having to plumb the depths of the internet to find anyone that might have clipped up something from anywhere in the world, because when you're in a foreign country, you can't access things like your Sky and your TNT Sports stuff, because it won't allow you, because you're not in the region to watch it. So a very, Spurs learnt their lessons on the pitch on Sunday. I learnt my lessons off the pitch on Thursday night, that I definitely require NordVPN, whether it be through work or being away on my travels as well. Because, you can probably say it with me now, but NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world, and that means no buffering, no lagging, and you can stream your favorite shows from anywhere in the world without your bandwidth throttling. It is something I've not only used for that sort of aspect that I've just spoken about, but I also used it sometimes for, it might be booking a flight from another country, making your device think it's in the destination country, or a hotel. Sometimes you can get cheaper prices for things by doing it that way, so it thinks you're in the local country. And also security-wise, there's an element of it that helps lock up to a degree your device if you're having to use slightly dodgy public Wi-Fi out and about. And on top of all of that, to get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, you can go to nordvpn.com/goldguest, and our link will give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. I really need to go and do that myself. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, and in case you missed that link, it is in the podcast episode description box.
So the second half now, not a good 45 minutes from Tottenham. I mean, looking at it, for me, it just seems to be like a mentality issue there. You're going in like 2-0 up. It's almost like, game's done and dusted. We can take it down a gear or two here. But I've always got to be careful against Brighton, because they've got some really, really good players in there, especially in the attack. And it was Minter who got Spurs, got Brighton back into the game, and then Ruter and Welbeck scoring the other goals. And I mean, when you're 2-0 up, you don't want to let the team back into the contest anyway. But the last thing you want to do is concede within a couple of minutes of the restart, because then, that's just piling an awful lot of pressure on you. And that's exactly what happened in the end.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about cliches, but conceding early in the second half of a game, there's those 2 periods, isn't it? Conceding just before the break and conceding just after the break. And they were both psychologically so damaging in different ways. And the entire Amex Stadium changed in that moment. The crowd got up. Brighton suddenly had belief in themselves. Spurs suddenly started doubting themselves after having no doubts about themselves in the opening 45 minutes. And it all, it all kind of went wrong from that moment, and just the errors, just the errors you kind of see in it. And I mean, look, I think also very wary that because we're a Spurs-based podcast and our focus on Spurs, we're going to pick out a lot of the things they did wrong. And I think it's also kind of important to say that, Brighton played very well in the second half. The change that Herzler made at half-time, I think, made a difference as well. Estupiñán coming in for Catered as well, I think that changed things. Catered was really struggling with Johnson and Kulusevski. He was getting doubled up on all the time. And Estupiñán came in. Obviously, he scored the worldie against Spurs, didn't he, last time? And,
yeah, top corner, wasn't it?
Yeah. So he came on and he kind of gave them a little bit more there in that position. But all that aside, Spurs were also very generous. I mean, it was strange, that first goal. Matoma got down the left. He got in behind Porro. Porro managed to track back. Romero started to come across to help him, and Porro holds his hands up, one hand up, and says, no, it's fine. Don't worry, I've got this. And I kind of feel like that was one section of it where had he let Romero come across, perhaps Romero stops the cross coming through. And we now know that would have been very helpful, because Mickey van der Ven made a complete hash of trying to intercept it. It bounces through, and Destiny Doggy makes an even worse mess of trying to clear it. He kind of, I don't know whether he's put off by van der Ven, but he swings a leg, hits the inside of his leg, and then it drops to, Minte, who very gratefully goes, thanks for that, and slots it into the bottom corner. I mean, all of those players I've just mentioned, I felt had a real off day. Porro probably the least of them all. He maybe gets away slightly more than the others, but I mean, Romero just badly timed as well with the international break, because obviously there's a little bit of a narrative of him that he's disputed in the past about being more interested in international stuff. He was so poor, and we're going to talk about him, especially for the third goal being absolutely dreadful. I actually thought Van der Ven, despite having a night off on Thursday night, wasn't really at the races. It looked a little bit off the pace. And Udogie, again, another one who'd had a day off, coming back from the quad problem he had. He just had he very much looked like a young left back in that second half. He was making mistake after mistake. And we're going to talk about it, of course. That's another question that we'll discuss. Should Postecoglou have made some changes? And then that might have included Udogie as well. But that first half was a combination of all of that coming together, I felt.
I think before Brighton scored, the second, Vicario made a save to his right, didn't he? And that all came from Udogie's poor pass to Kulusevski in the middle, and Brighton then won the ball from there. I mean, second goal, Ruta finished it really well, but again, it's just so poor from a Tottenham perspective, especially defensively, when you've got quality players at the back in Romero and Van der Ven, and just all too easy. Yeah,
and Spurs could have scored just before that. Kulusevski got in down the right and pulled the ball across the box. And it was just in front. Well, that wasn't actually. That's not. To be realistic, it was way too far in front of Solanke as he ran in. But that was a good chance. And then it was not long after they sweep up the other end. Matoma just practically walked between Bentancur and Romero. It just had so much space. Romero eventually is like, I should really challenge for this. And he tries to put in this really kind of late lunge that's nowhere near the ball. The ball had already gone. Rutte, like you say, he'd run in between Van der Ven and Udogie. Udogie made a really half-hearted challenge on him, maybe worried about bringing him down and just inside the box. I don't know. But that, in essence, kind of pushed him inside Van der Ven. And it's a lovely finish across the keeper. That's what you should be doing with it. But you could see Postecoglou was just shaking his head on the touchline. It was just like, there's a combination of everything rubbish about what they were doing defensively. They crumbled again. And for me, I mean, it's probably a good point to talk about it. For me, in that moment, that's when he should have made changes. You could argue, some people might argue earlier than that, but for me, that was the real moment where it was like, okay, the game's actually really getting away from them now. And look, there's the obvious thing that always comes after Spurs have a disappointing result is that people look at Postecoglou in the touchline and they say, he does nothing. He just stands there, just watches. It's like, look, if you want an arms-waving, reactionary, shouty, screamy manager, Postecoglou's not your man. We've had him for a year now. It kind of should be known that's not what he does across his career. You'll hear him bellow the odd thing. He'll make little kind of interjections. He'll tell players where to go and stuff like that. But if you want him to be a madcap, Hurzeler on the other side is like, he's a bundle of angry energy. He was like, he's had a few disciplinary issues already, hasn't he? I think in the Premier League. And he's like, he's constantly going at the fourth official and stuff like that. And I'll be honest, I've never really cared about that sort of stuff. I've never want to see it. I think it's a show thing. I think it makes people feel better if they see their manager is as irate and frustrated as they are. I get that. But with someone like Postecoglou, his whole thing, and he's explained this before, is that he wants to just observe the game so that he can make better decisions. However, when it's a good day like Sunday, I didn't feel like his decisions were that great. And I felt like that was a moment when too many of his players were just falling out of the rhythm of the game. There were too many players, like Bentancur was just an onlooker by that point in the second half. He was just watching the game passing by. And like I say, some of those defenders, Doggy was just having a nightmare. And look, I know he's got a lack of depth right now on the bench. There's no Son, Richarlison, Odegaard. All of those kind of players would be making it a fuller squad to bring on changes. But I just felt like he didn't bring on Basuma or Sarr until the 79th minute, which is after the third goal had gone in. And you kind of think even Basuma or Sarr might have changed the momentum of the game at that point. Just some different ideas, some fresh legs, or even Jed Spence coming on for Destiny Doggy, just to put a confident play in there. Spence coming on at Coventry changed that game. He had a big impact on that. And at Man U, I know it was against 10 men, but I felt he did really well at Old Trafford as well. And there's a strange thing behind the whole Spence thing, and that he wasn't taken to Budapest in midweek. Reguilón was, even though both of them weren't registered to play in the squad. And the reasoning, it seemed to be, was that Spence could then work hard at Hotspur Way and prepare in case he was required if a doggy didn't make it. And it was a bit like, well, you've done all that preparation with him. He was ready to come in this game if required, and it didn't bring him on at all in the entire game. And you just think, Porro had played the 95 minutes or so in Budapest. Udogie was having a mare. If ever there was a game that you could have brought on Spence to just bring something different, bring a forward momentum going in the other direction, and he didn't take it. He's never going to bring Romero off, but you've got Dragusin who's fully fit and fresh there, and to bring on if you wanted that, even though Romero had played 95 minutes. I mean, it could have even been a young player. Archie Gray was brilliant on Thursday night. You could have maybe brought him on for a bit of injection into the game. Lucas Berval, Mikey Moore maybe could have come on a bit earlier. And he kind of did what I feel goes against what Postecoglou does. He played it safe. He was kind of like, I don't know if I want to put these players into this situation. It might be more difficult for them. I don't know. Or even I'm just going to trust these players. And his trust was misplaced. They obviously, Brighton, then go and score a third 8 minutes after the second.
Yeah, I think with the subs, this isn't like the first time it's been an issue. Spurs fans have pointed out it a number of times in the past, whether it's just making the subs too late or making them at the wrong time. But I think a lot of managers, and I'll say the same about Deitch at Everton, he's always the same. I think it's probably just this belief in, this is my system, this is my strongest team. Might be going through a bit of a rough patch, but it will work because it usually does.
Yeah.
And usually he'll only make changes if there's an injury or things are going badly wrong or the levels have dropped. But surely Postecoglou should be changing it at that point, where it's just the fresh legs of maybe Sarr, bring a bit of energy into midfield, Basuma maybe to get control, or Spence to try and tighten things up at the back with a doggy struggling. Surely you can see that and realise that you need to change it because Brighton have all the momentum and they're going to get a winner here.
Yeah, what I would say, I mean, in Postecoglou's defence, in a way, he is actually quite known for a sweeping changes, like 2 or 3 changes at the hour mark, because he there's certain positions, mainly the number 8s, where he wants there to be energy to carry out exactly what they need to do. And I just can only feel that he didn't trust what he had on his bench. And that's the only thing I can think of. And that he didn't have enough kind of deeper options to go to, but there still were options. I mean, if you're going to kind of look with hindsight, Basuma wasn't very good when he came on. I mean, he almost gave away a penalty soon after. I can't remember who it was, whether it was Rutter. I can't remember who it was, but he went in for a sliding challenge on someone. He was very lucky they stayed up and ended up having, I think the shot went off target. I can't remember. But he really could have given away a penalty in that moment. But yeah, certainly Sarr could have added a little bit more to it. And yeah, if anything, that was my gripe with it was kind of unlike him. He waited until the last 11 minutes and the game was already away from them. There's been times this season when the subs have come on and changed things for him. So, I don't think he definitely can have this blanket thing against him that he's, let's be honest, every time a team loses a game, the manager and the subs are always looked at. Of course they are. If we kind of believe what I write, what we say, what the fans think, every single Spurs manager there's ever been has been terrible at subs and they make bad subs. They wait until the wrong time. But there are games like this where you can kind of see it. And do you know what? This kind of dips into the press conference stuff. I didn't like his answer on it after the game at all. I felt that was one of the answers that I felt was, again, very flippant. And I'll explain why. He was asked, I think it might have been George from PA asked him, was he tempted to make earlier changes in the game? And he said, yeah, I could have, but all these things are totally irrelevant to me. Substitutions, all those kind of things. If you're not competitive, it doesn't matter what you do. You're not going to get rewards you don't deserve to win. We didn't deserve on our second half performance, irrespective of subs or anything else, to get something out of the game. But I think if you do get something out of the game, you're falsely rewarded, and I don't want to get falsely rewarded. I'm sorry, but that's just daft. It's a silly answer. It's an answer where I've got a point to make. I want to make this point to my players, and I'm going to make it. And it's a bit like, I'm sorry, but win the game. Win the game. Get falsely rewarded, and then fix it, or fix it in the moment. Don't just kind of say, well, I'd rather lose it and they learn their lesson, because that's just not true. He wasn't after Coventry game when they were horrendous but came back to win it. He wasn't going like, well, I didn't really want to win that because I didn't feel like it was a bit fair. They shouldn't have been, falsely rewarded for that game. It's like, I didn't like that answer at all. I felt a lot of the things various things he said in the press conference were absolutely right, and about the context, which we'll talk about as well. But I'm sorry, get the win, make the changes, take those false rewards or whatever, be 5 points off the top rather than 8 points they now are off the top. And then, behind the scenes, fix these things. The players will know that they got away with it if they still win a game like that. Like Coventry, I actually felt like getting away with it at Coventry, but kind of learning from that game probably sparked the 4 wins after that. I just thought that was, for a 59-year-old who speaks a lot of sense, but I thought that one was just a bit of a daft, off-the-cuff answer for me.
3 points is 3 points at the end of the day. It doesn't matter how you get them. You want those points on the board. And let's be honest, you're not going to steamroll teams week in, week out and win 5 or 6-0. It doesn't happen. It never happens like that. So you take what you can get. And let's be honest, when come the end of the season, when you look at the Premier League table, you don't go, well, actually, that's a bit of a false position because we didn't deserve to win this game. We didn't deserve to win this game. We should actually be a few places lower in the table. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, just that answer as well. The first part, what struck me, is like, well, even if they make the subs, it's not going to make much of a change here or an impact on the game as well. What isn't really the greatest thing, because I mean, some good options on that bench, even though you're still missing Son, Richarlison, Odegaard. Basuma and Sarr were in Tottenham's best midfield last season in the first 3 months, and then all of a sudden they've just fallen down the pecking order of late. So it's not like it was a bench full of young kids who were untried in the Premier League. Then you could maybe understand maybe not making a change, but there's some decent options on there still.
Yeah. And then we've got the third goal. What did you make of the third goal?
Shambles. All of it.
awful. It was the
honestly,
worst of the bunch.
it was just like school kid stuff. At the end of the day, on the highlights, it showed the aerial view of it, and it's like 2 Brighton players, 6 Tottenham players
Yeah.
in the box, and Brighton are coming out on top and scoring a winner. Benson Kerr needs to be so much stronger in that position, not just throwing in a foot. You've got to win the ball in that position, because I know you're going to have maybe thinking about, I could actually make contact with the player and hear and concede a penalty, but first thought, you just got to win the ball. Then Romero just caught napping. Just doesn't look like he knows where Welbeck is. And very similar to the Vardy goal at Leicester on the opening weekend of the season, where you're just not aware of the surroundings and who's there. But credit to Welbeck getting on the end of the cross, good header to win it. But again, just looking at it from a Tottenham perspective, it's comical, really. Some of the defending, really poor.
Welbeck always seems to score against Spurs. I just seems to love playing Spurs. I don't know whether this will count as a set piece goal because it was from a throw-in. I don't know how that works. There's
might,
some suggestions it might, which is a pain because I've been enjoying the fact that Spurs have only technically conceded 1 set piece goal so far this season. But if you're going to count this, and I think there was another throw-in maybe earlier in the season, it was just a mess from the start. I mean, Veltman throw-in, Rutter receives the ball, back to the goal, back to Doggy, almost heading away from goal, and he just suddenly turns Doggy inside out, nutmegs him. It's all so easy to do. I mean, it's lovely skill, but it's too easy to do. And then, yes, that Bentancur moment was just ridiculous. It's really passive. It's almost like he thinks the ball's going to go out, and he's kind of shepherding him out of play. And it's a classic, when Postecoglou after game talks about winning the duels, that was one of the moments. That was where Rutter just shows so much more determination to get to the ball, slides in, chips it kind of across the, scoops it in a way. Bentancur's yelling for like a foul that never was. I don't know what he was trying to claim had happened there. Romero, I think he was already boarding the plane to go on Argentina duty. It was just terrible. He grabs Welbeck early in the move as if say, I've got you, you're not going anywhere. And then is distracted by what's happening with Udogie and Bentancur, starts to wander, and then at the last second thinks, oh no, that Welbeck guy, he was there, wasn't he? And he just kind of just is given the freedom to do an unmarked header into the net. And for me, looking at that was one of the moments where there was just no leadership in the team whatsoever. There was no leadership really in that second half whatsoever. But Romero's captain for the day. Romero just goes missing. After the goal, he's just muttering away to himself. Vicario is probably the only one I saw showing some leadership. And like you say, he made that save from Mitoma in between the first and the second goal. And he was trying to you could see him trying to talk to the defence, but Romero, like I say, muttering to himself. Madison, who was just kind of watching on rather than going in for a challenge, he walks away muttering to himself as well. There's no Sonny right now either. I kind of feel like that's the area. Obviously, the Postecoglou whole thing is a work in progress. You're going to get games like this, especially with younger teams, but you rely massively on your older, experienced players. And I just looked across that group, and Romero offering very little in the way of leadership. Madison, kind of feel like he talks a good game, and he's been in really good form. I don't want to kind of criticize Madison's form, but I kind of feel like as a leader on the pitch, maybe that's not his forte. I don't know. Sonny's not there to obviously that's beyond his control. Bentancur, that's an experienced player. He's an experienced player. He's a 3-time Serie A title winner. Nothing. It's just like very quiet. You barely kind of even hear him shouting on the pitch. And I know it's a silly little thing as well. And this, I'm almost loath to say it because it's not the be all and end all in any way. But we were kind of discussing this before we came on. Even just like social media after game, after all the wins, all these players are out there like, hey, well, lads, yeah, great stuff. We go on, always together, all of this sort of stuff, all of them doing their posts. I could be wrong. Haven't seen a single thing, an apology to the fans, anything to kind of say, yeah, that was just dreadful, we're so sorry, kind of thing. And then, you know, I don't know whether it's for fear of what comes back at them, the responses, I don't know. The only person so far that's been on social media is Yves Bissouma with an Instagram post, which is the first one, Instagram post, talking about his parents and the wonderful impact they've had on his life. And it is a genuinely lovely Instagram story post. It is then followed up by another Instagram story post, which is of him and his parents on the, looks like first class on a flight or something. And his dad is wearing a T-shirt that proclaims drugs on the front of it, which is a very interesting photo to use, bearing in mind what happened with Yves Bissouma and his suspension earlier this summer. Yeah, I mean, we're going into a whole different territory, but it did kind of amuse me when I saw that. I was just like, what? But yeah, I mean, the leadership, mainly it's on the pitch. That's the important place. The social media stuff's all a bit of a misnomer, but I just kind of feel like it all ties into people not stepping up. And do you feel that about Spurs? They just don't have that leadership. I mean, especially with Sonny out.
Yeah, I think Sonny's a miss. Romero, I suppose there's the language barrier impact things. I don't know how good his English is.
Not great, no.
Well, it'll certainly be better than Richarlison's, put it that way.
I don't know about that, actually.
Maddison, I don't see as a leader, personally. Maybe that will come with time. I can't really remember if he wore the armband at Leicester on a few occasions in the past.
He's 27, though.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, but there's still experienced heads in there. I mean, Decky, he captained Sweden, didn't he?
Yeah.
Recently, last international break.
He did. I mean, he's still only 24, is he?
Yeah, 24. But yeah, I just didn't have those, Roy Keane type leaders maybe fans want in there.
Yeah. Are you saying they miss Højbjerg?
I think they do to an extent.
He was good last season at shutting down games.
Yeah. Just like the leadership qualities. I mean, he'd have been probably an ideal player to bring on yesterday at the Amex, say when you're winning 2-1 and Brighton are, pushing for a second, then someone like him to come on and have an impact in the midfield, just that nous of knowing how to win a game and get you over the line. I think that is
just couldn't play the football though.
No, but I think even like last season, if it's just him coming off the bench, I know it's not the role he wants, but it's a good role for Postecoglou and the team just to have someone like him on the bench as an option. But yeah, I do think they miss a couple of those leaders in there, and it is a bit of a young team as well. And maybe, like I said, maybe it does come with time. In a few years, these players will develop into the leaders Spurs require right now.
Yeah, I mean, they're very, very young right now, but players like Archie Gray, he could develop into a midfield leader. He kind of gives that air when you talk to him. He's very much got it, but he is 18 years old, and you can't expect that from him now. And who knows, someone like Pedro Porro maybe could end up being more of a leader. I mean, his English is coming along. He did the pre-match interview for Sky, which was a big thing for him. That was his first one of those. So yeah, maybe, but I want more from someone like Romero. Romero's a World Cup winner, 2-time Copa America winner. He should be leading by example, not kind of muttering to himself. And like you, need more from that, definitely.
Yeah, I think Stephen Warnock on Match of the Day too summed it up quite right last night in terms of Spurs were in fifth gear in the first half. Then when you drop a few gears, it is so hard to get back into the fifth gear, especially when you're chasing the game. And just proves so costly in the end because it looks so good in the first 45 minutes. And I think we probably all thought we were going to be talking about another win, but Spurs again, number of examples in the past where they've let a lead slip. I think, did you put a good stat in your, I don't know if you tweeted it or put it in your...
stat, but it's a stat.
Yeah, well, not a good one from a Tottenham perspective.
No.
but haven't they lost the lead like double figures now, about 10 times?
I can tell you that stat. The kind people at Opta reminded us after the game that Spurs have now, this is the 10th time Spurs have lost a Premier League game in which they've led by 2 or more goals. They're the first club to reach double figures in the Premier League in doing so. 3 more than any other side in the Premier League's history to have done that. Of course, most of those came before Postecoglou's time, but still, unfortunately, that Spursy word is never going to be far when you've got stats like that.
Yep. Just a bit more on Andrew's post-match press conference. He was saying this was like the worst defeat since he has been Spurs boss. I can't think of any others that really top it. There have been some bad defeats along the way.
Newcastle away last season was dreadful. Fulham away was dreadful.
Yeah. But in terms of a game where you were winning, look on course for 3 points, and then to throw it away with really soft goals.
Wolves away.
Yeah, certainly not as bad as yesterday at the Amex. No. So what else did he have to say then in the post-match? Any other notable points? Or
I don't know why, but the tone and the way you said that sounded really bad. So what else did he have to say? It was like quite accusatory. I love that. He was seething. The whole press conference was a very, you could see, trying to kind of retain his calm in front of the media while clearly having absolutely gone at the players. He had that kind of sense about him. Everything, it was quite long, his press conference. Everything else had been quite short. His club interview was like 76 seconds long, and I think his other, the Sky ones weren't long. We got a good 8 minutes out of him just through constantly kind of probing him with various questions. Worst kind of one, talking about the lack of intensity in the duels and competitiveness. And this is the thing, you can't underestimate Brighton. They've only lost once. That Chelsea defeat was their first defeat of the season, wasn't it? They have been pretty. I mean, they've had a couple of results, draws that they could have done better in, but ultimately it's not like they're a team that have lost games other than the Chelsea one. So you couldn't underestimate them. And to go, he didn't know whether it was complacency, he didn't know what it was, but he was just very clear that I'll fix it. Whatever it is, I'm going to fix it. It's like, otherwise I wouldn't be here, kind of thing. He was also keen to put across the context, and I do feel like this is a key thing. I don't want people to come away from this thinking that we're kind of saying it's the end of the world, Ange needs to go, any of this kind of silly stuff that kind of people in the very emotional moments kind of react to stuff, because there is context. They're coming to this off the back of 5 wins, and I mean, here's his quote. He said, because the question was, after a couple of positives results, maybe there was some overconfidence in the players at half time. And he said, look, it's not a couple of positive results. It's 5 wins in a row. Let's just keep things in context here. I understand the extremes of what we do. What I'm saying is that we didn't do the basics of everything we've done to get to this point, good, bad, or otherwise. And there's kind of a longer bit to the quote that we don't need to go into. But he is right in that. And when you get a result like this, which is really disappointing, even though the first half was brilliant, people start to then rewrite a little bit of kind of history, don't they? So the 5 wins now, I made the mistake of looking at social media. Now the 5 wins were all rubbish. They were lucky. That's what they should have done anyway. The win at Old Trafford was downgraded because Man U were terrible. When Man U went to Villa yesterday and drew and should have won it, they had a late chance that they really should have won that game at Villa. Brentford apparently are just a team that you should be beating, even though they've only lost twice to City and Liverpool this season in quite narrow defeats. As people like to call them, rather than Carabag, it's Carrier Bag. They'd beat some team called Carrier Bag. Yeah, but people forgetting the fact that they had a man sent off after 7 minutes, Spurs, and won that with 10 men, 3-0. And even the Ferencváros game, people saying, they're like a Hungarian pub team. They should have beaten them. It's like Spurs have won only one of their last 9 European away games. You can't sniff at that and say that's an easy thing that they should have done anyway. The only one I really feel like last 5 you can absolutely go at is the Coventry game, because they were horrendous Spurs and they did not deserve to win that. And it's against a championship team, even if, yes, ultimately they kind of mustered together the character to win it. And like I say, Brighton had only lost the one game before this as well. So yeah, I really hope people aren't just going to rewrite the last 5 games because they've had a terrible 45 minutes against Brighton. That would be such a shame because it kind of undoes a lot of the good stuff the players did. Was it 13 goals scored, only 3 conceded across those 5 games as well? I have no doubt that if they continue to play the way they were playing in those games, play the way they played in the first 45 minutes, learn from the 45 minutes of yesterday at the end, they're going to, I think it's actually really good that they've got a derby first game out against West Ham at the Spurs Stadium, because immediately they have to be up for it. There's no hiding place. They cannot go into that game half-baked whatsoever. I think if they keep playing the way that they have in the majority of their performances this season, I think they're going to be fine this season. But you're going to have moments in a team and under a rebuild that's going to have shaky halves of football like that.
Yeah, you can accept defeats. At the end of the day, it's part and parcel of football, but it's just the manner of this one. When you're winning 2-0, you're in cruise control, and then just completely, fall to pieces in the second half. And like I said at the start of the podcast, the worst possible thing now is going to an international break. You're waiting 2 weeks to get back on track against West Ham. A couple of, not easy fixtures: West Ham, Crystal Palace, Man City in the cup as well. And then there's the AZ game against AZ in the Europa League as well coming up. So, 2 weeks now to stew on the defeat, and fingers crossed, get back to winning ways against West Ham on Saturday, October the 19th. We'll leave it here for today's podcast. I think we'll be back next week to discuss what's happening at Spurs during the international break, then also look ahead to the West Ham game. So in the meantime, keep with us at football.london for all your latest Tottenham news. To get the best discount off your NordVPN plan, go to nordvpn.com/Gold Guest. Our link will also give you 4 extra months on the 2-year plan. There's no risk with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. The link is in the podcast episode description box.